Hi, and welcome to Axelbank Reports History and Today, conversations with America's top nonfiction authors and why their books matter right now. I'm Evan Axelbank, and today we're going to speak with Dr. Peter Onuf, the co-author of Thomas Jefferson Survives, American Independence in His Time and Ours. He's a professor emeritus at the University of Virginia, has written many books, and is one of the foremost experts on Thomas Jefferson. So it really is an honor to have him here on our show. And it is fitting for this special edition of our show, which we're releasing on July 4th, 2026, the 250th anniversary of the ratification of the Declaration of Independence and the 200th anniversary of Thomas Jefferson's passing. Thanks so much for being here, Professor.
It's great to be here.
Before we get going, I want to invite listeners to our Patreon page to ask for your support in keeping the show going. Go to patreon.com/AxelbankHistory. We're going to donate part of your contributions to a charity for children's literacy. And also AxelbankHistory.com is designed by Nikki Rideout of Ellie Claire Designs. It has our most recent episodes, our featured episodes, and a link to that Patreon page. So check out AxelbankHistory.com and Nikki's work. In one of the blurbs of the book, John Meacham says, "We can do ourselves and our country no greater service than to contemplate Jefferson as he was then and what he means to us now." And of course, that's especially true for our 250th anniversary. We are marking the time as if it is a long time, and it is in a lot of ways. It feels like a long time, especially because it's 3 times as most of our lifetimes, if we can be lucky enough to live 80 years or so. So I want to ask you, Peter, similar to the question of whether one had a long week or a short week, is 250 years a long time to have a country or a short time to have a country?
I love that question. It is a very long time. Key term for Jefferson is generation. We think generationally. They got the boomers. I'm one of those. I'm nearly dead. I'm 80, so it's 3 times me. So the reason it's a long time is Jefferson's whole conception of democracy is it is a work in progress, and it's always at risk. The Declaration of Independence was, you might even say, a kind of prayer, a hope. It announced a project, an experiment, enlightenment people might have called it, and experiments can fail. Human life fails. We die. And the analogy of human life to the life of a regime is a close one, because real people are involved. And the people at any one given moment aren't people 20 years later. That's his central insight. You got a majority at this minute, and okay, get our names down. We're more than the other guys. We win. So you do what we say. Well, 20 years go by. A lot of us have gone by. And we're not the majority anymore. The majority, now we have a people who are subject to laws, to a way of life, to a constitution that they didn't endorse. So that seems like simple math, but it maps onto a human reality, and a reality that people in Jefferson's time experienced. That is, they had no idea whether they would win this war. And big fact about the Declaration, they were fighting for 14 months before they declared, rather than achieved, declared independence.
The foreword for the book is written by another storied scholar of American history. That's Annette Gordon-Reed, another of our guests on this show. She says that history tells us that republics are fragile and that it comes to citizens to work to maintain them. What did Thomas Jefferson leave behind that suggests that he understood that concept, that democracy would take tending the way a gardener would? It's a metaphor I once heard Barack Obama say.
Yeah, no, that is a good metaphor. It survives only because the people make it survive. Another way to put that is people under a democracy, according to self-government, governing themselves, make their own history. And that's the problem with, if you fetishize the past, you keep looking back and saying, well, they got it right. We just have to conform to their standard. That's ridiculous because the world has changed. So, if we don't accommodate for change, then we can't preserve the regime. It's as simple as that. It's at the core of all our arguments about how to interpret the Constitution, about whether the dead hand of the past should rule. That's the Jeffersonian threat. Uh, his whole conception of democracy is opposed to his idea of aristocracy, which is the rule of the dead. That is, they lay down the rules and they die, but somehow they keep living through us and dominating us. So we think of the revolution as being liberated from Britain, becoming a new people carved out of the British people. Uh, but it's also a liberation from our ancestors. And it's an irony of the way we worship the founders, that to some extent we're subjecting ourselves to the founders, and that's not Jefferson's conception.
Professor Gordon Reed says that Jefferson has become something of persona non grata among some modern Americans, though there are certainly those on the American right, especially on the American right, but not exclusively, who say there is little to be confused about. How does the struggle over Jefferson's memory convey where we are as a country right now?
Well, it is a struggle over whether we make Jefferson into a kind of God, or we worship him, or we understand him on his own terms. It's as simple as that. Uh, Jefferson is a flawed human being, and I ask yourself to look into the mirror and say, what kind of human being are you? Aren't we all flawed? Uh, what we're looking for is humility, modesty, a willingness to subordinate self to the larger good. That's a model of leadership. And Jefferson strove for that. He was as eager to be loved and be remembered as anybody else, but he didn't confuse that with his duty to his country.
The book is called Jefferson Survives, which is supposedly what John Adams said to himself
Yes.
as he passed away, not realizing that Jefferson had died just hours earlier. It was one of these poetic moments in American history that makes it into every biography of either man. Um, Amazingly, just exactly 200 years to the day when this episode will be released, and also 50 years after the Declaration, of course, was ratified. How convinced are you, based on all your scholarship, that Adams actually said that in that moment?
Oh, uh, I like your notion of poetry. It's poetry. It's fine. I don't need it to be true, but it is a kind of truth. Look, they both desperately wanted to live until that day, just so that we could remember it 250 years later. And if who cares? I mean, I'm ready to believe that. That's that. You can fake me out with that. I don't care.
Let's go back to the beginning for Thomas Jefferson. What was his childhood like? What happened in his formative years that foreshadowed this potential that he would become not just an important person, but somebody who could express themselves and write the way that he did?
Well, he lost his father when he was pretty young. He got a few books from him. His father was wealthy enough to live well and make him an aspirational part of the Virginia elite. That's the simple answer. Uh, and Jefferson went to College of William and Mary and hung out with the professors and the governor of Virginia at the time. Uh, he was a very, very ambitious young man, and the best way to characterize him is as a Creole, that is, as a European born in the New World, as a provincial, maybe it's a more familiar term. He is intensely British, more British than the British. I think this is a key fact about all Americans, elite particularly, because what they aspired to was to achieve the kind of gentility of their British counterparts. But if you've looked at the big houses of elite colonial provincial Americans and to compare them to the palaces of Britain, you get a good sense of scale. They were aspiring to be higher status. Don't we? We all do that. We all want to be advanced. We want to improve ourselves. And that meant becoming more British. What didn't happen for Jefferson, what he wanted to happen, was he didn't take the grand tour. He didn't go to Britain because all people in the provinces are attracted to the metropolis. So this may sound like cheap pop psychology, but Jefferson loved the metropolis, Britain, to death. He loved it in a way that set up his disappointment. And I don't mean to trivialize it, it's a broader disappointment that people in his class have because they're failing to get recognized as equals by their British counterparts. So this makes it seem just simple and psychological and sociological, but the deeper problem is what is going to be the status of these overseas British places going forward. The idea of Great Britain is one that emerges in the 18th century, the Act of Union, bringing Scotland into the United Kingdom in 1707. Anglo-Americans, people like Jefferson, thought of themselves as part of a still greater Britain. That intense identification with the metropolis is what sets the stage for the break. That is, the British imperial ambitions, taxation, trying to draw some revenue from the provinces, is what launched the imperial crisis. Nobody wanted to break from Britain. They were proud to be British. And that's something that many of us regret when we look at the Declaration, because we look at the first couple of paragraphs. If you look at Jefferson's draft, he says, we could have been a great and free people together. There's that sense of pathos of loss. So that doesn't probably tell you enough about his childhood, except that he's not unusual. You can make sense of him by putting him in that context.
How did his study of history impact the way he addressed, for him, that were the present problems as he tried to solve these problems? And he ended up working, of course, on the Declaration.
Right.
How well did his understanding of history impact him in the moment?
Well, the way to think about history in Jefferson's time is he has a Whiggish conception of history, and that's one of steady, slow progress in the struggle against prerogative, that is, against royal authority. He identifies with his British counterparts in the Glorious Revolution of 1688-89, in which the monarchy was contained. The way to think about British government and the Constitution in the 18th century, and this is Jefferson's setting, is that the king still has royal authority, has prerogative. He's the executive. He's like our president, but he's contained in Parliament. So the expression goes king in Parliament, king in Parliament. And that means that the king no longer has autocratic independent authority. He depends on the power of the purse that the commons have. So I don't want to get into a long talk about this, but this is Jefferson's notion, is thinking historically about the way British people think about themselves, is they've come through the Great Civil War of the 17th century and the Glorious Revolution, and Parliament is the Palladium of liberty. And when Parliament and the king turn against the colonies, make demands on them for revenue, and chiefly important is that they challenge the legislative autonomy of the provincial assemblies. That's another way of saying that the way Anglo-Americans understood themselves is they were free to tax themselves. They participated in the empire. They sent goods to the metropolis, to Britain, that were taxed at an extraordinarily high level and were a major source of revenue for the British government. That happened already, that before the Stamp Act and before the other efforts to levy additional revenue, which were really trivial and would have generated very little revenue. so that it was almost if it was of symbolic importance to establish those taxes so that you could say Parliament is supreme. That is the Kane Parliament, but Parliament first. Parliament is supreme. Parliament is sovereign. The modern idea of sovereignty seems to be anticipated by what the British are claiming in America. But Americans are saying, well, our legislatures have always been independent. The first use of independence is not about all the provinces together because they're not together. They have no relationship to each other. The independence they worry about is the independence of their local governments.
He dies in 1826. So that's 35 years before the Civil War starts. What was the wrestling match over his legacy in the immediacy of his death? It's weird to think of him as recent history, but the people who were alive then, in a lot of ways, knew Thomas Jefferson. What was the immediate thought about his legacy?
Well, there are a lot of thoughts. Jefferson has always been a lot of things and different things to different people, and that's an important thing to keep in mind. The 1798 Kentucky resolutions, which Jefferson penned in opposition to the Alien and Sedition Acts, talked about nullification. So he became the godfather of secession, the godfather of state sovereignty. It's a complete misreading of Jefferson because he never thought of Virginia as a self-sufficient sovereign nation in the modern sense of the word. What the Americans wanted to do in the Revolution was to secure their place in the British Empire, the greatest empire in the modern world. And having failed to do that, and we like to say that the Declaration of Independence is an announcement of failure. We didn't do it, guys. We have to go it alone. George Washington referred to the respective states on the eve of the federal Constitution of ratifying the federal Constitution. He talked about the states as wretched fragments of empire. I think that says it all. What Americans wanted as an independent people was a new and improved, better version of the British Empire. But what Americans in the antebellum period drew from all this were two different conceptions. One, increasingly popular in the slaveholding states of the South, was that the states had absolute authority over their own so-called domestic institutions, namely owning human beings. And it wasn't enough for the slave states to sustain the institution of slavery. They wanted protections for it throughout the Union. They wanted a fugitive slave act that would return escaped slaves. This is the big, as you know, Alex, Evan, the big struggle was over the future of the Union. Would it be a great empire of slavery, or would it be an empire of liberty? And you could draw both themes from Jefferson because Jefferson loved Virginia. Virginia was his country, just as the United States was his country. Now, keep that thing in your mind. That seems like a contradiction. You can't be both. Well, of course you can be both. I don't know where you are because we're in a virtual world and you don't know where I am. But I love my place, but I love our place too, and I bet you do as well. Multiple loyalties, nested jurisdictions. In fact, that's Jefferson's formula for sustaining patriotism: is divide and subdivide until that is authorities until you get down to the level of a town or a township or a ward and a county and a state, and you can be loyal to all of those. And that loyalty is as we say nowadays, you act locally and think globally or something along those lines. And that's Jefferson's notion of patriotism. It begins at home.
How did the Civil War become a turning point for the legacy of Thomas Jefferson?
Well, it nullified him, so to speak. That is, George Washington was the hero of the Confederacy. They had a big statue of him in Virginia. And Jefferson just seemed irrelevant, and except in this, and you know this is true, and it's really important. Uh, Abraham Lincoln saved Jefferson in the Gettysburg Address. That is, he evoked uh, the Declaration of Independence as a founding document. He, in effect, got over the Jefferson problem we have and people had on the eve of the Civil War, and that is, we dismiss him as a racist and a slaveholder. Well, you might be tempted to dismiss him from both sides in the North. Why would you support him supporting the Union as Lincoln did? Why would you support Jefferson, who seems to be the godfather of nullification and secession? And why would Southerners support him? Because he said all those things about equality. And he said slavery was an unjust institution. So he was getting it both ways. And that's the history of Jefferson, really, is he's a controversial character. He's always been a controversial character.
Wars seem to have an impact on his legacy because, as you contend, his reputation changes again after World War One. Why do you think wars seem to have an impact on his legacy like this?
Well, thank you for asking that. I'm glad that we set that up because war is central. The Declaration of Independence is a wartime manifesto. Democracy as we know it is building a movement, building a coalition, mobilizing the people so that they think of themselves as a people. There was no reason that people in Massachusetts and Georgia should identify with each other. They had nothing in common except the fact of the British connection. So the war put people on the line, made them make choices. And in this process of mobilization, ideas of consent and equality become important. But in many cases, that consent is coerced because you got to make a choice. You have a gun at your head. Which way is it going to point? I don't mean to be crude about it, but democracy only means something in the context of making demands on the people to give their lives, to risk their lives. And an important factoid to keep in mind is this might have been, you can dismiss the revolution as a tax revolt. Americans hate paying taxes and they mobilized against taxation. And that's a wonderful story to tell. But they tripled their tax burdens by fighting the war, by making, as an independent people, they had to pay much higher levels of taxes. So anyway, the war is important. He's controversial because the revolution is itself a kind of civil war. And it turns American against American as well as Americans against British. It turns Americans, that is white Americans, against black Americans. The enslaved people were a potential fifth column and counter-revolutionary force. And they did join Lord Dunmore in Virginia and elsewhere in the British counter-revolutionary cause. So if you put Jefferson firmly in that context of war making, you understand not only Jefferson and what he's trying to do by building a movement, building a coalition, winning a war. Well, democracy then is not just this lovely idea that we talk about around a seminar table and say, hey, are we all equal? Of course, you sit around a seminar table, there's going to be some big bully like me saying, so why should you respect people when nobody respected the ordinary people in the 18th century? Democracy was a dirty word to some extent. The people, who are they? They don't count. They're mobs. They're ignorant. They're dirty. They smell. They're illiterate. When you're fighting a war, you need all the support you can get, and you got to tell people they're equal to you. You're going to put yourself on their level. And Jefferson thinks that you can have a truly equal people by leveling up rather than dropping down. So that it's not kissing babies. What it's doing is acknowledging the dignity and respecting the integrity of everybody who's going to be involved. So thinking in dynamic terms of democracy as something that happens through mobilization, through progress, through this dynamic process in the middle of a war Well, Jefferson continues to be affected throughout his history. His image to us uh, is varies with the controversies of the day. I think we just need to get by making judgments on him as he's a slaveholder, he's a terrible guy, we don't want to identify with him, we're better than he is, and think, well, what was he doing in his own moment? There was a fight going on, and Jefferson says when he thinks about generational sovereignty, every generation is going to have to fight its own fight. That's what he wanted to communicate to us.
The other thing about Jefferson is that the presidents, his successors, all, not all, but some of them um, talk, uh, they revere him. A couple of those were FDR and JFK as we move now into the middle part of the 20th century.
Yeah.
What did they find in Thomas Jefferson that was useful to them politically as America went into the nuclear age?
Well, before Jefferson went down the toilet, and it was because of slavery and race, and we understand why. It makes sense because it's our way of reassuring ourselves that we have made progress, and it's an irony. Jefferson looks forward, believing in progress, and having achieved progress, we look back and blame him for not having achieved what we achieved. It's kind of bizarre. Uh, but FDR uh, uh, governed, was president at a time as World War II developed, in which our modern sense of who we are as a people emerged, and that is the free world. That is, it was going to be an existential crisis. It was an existential crisis, testing the democracies of the world, whether they could survive against fascism and later against communism. It's in that broad context of a worldwide struggle for self-government, for democracy, the free world, as we called ourselves in those old days, in which Jefferson could be celebrated, as FDR did, as an apostle of liberty.
I don't want to make it awkward for you, but to have you to ask you about your friend Annette Gordon Reed, but we do have to ask, how much of an impact did her studies, her landmark studies on Thomas Jefferson's family tree have in his reputation amongst those who lived in, I guess, the late 90s and then early 2000s?
Well, I want to emphasize, she and I worked closely together. We wrote a biography of Jefferson. I always accused her of being soft on Jefferson and liking him too much. And I would say I'm deeply conflicted. In other words, listen, I'm not going to make a judgment because I'm torn. Uh, she has a very generous attitude. She loves her country. She doesn't love Jefferson, but she understands him. And she was fascinated by him from when she was a little girl. And she doesn't go through the agonies that we all do about his slaveholding because it's a given. She said, of course he was. She knows that, and uh, and so it's not a sudden discovery. It's not an epiphany. Oh, he's a bad guy. Uh, instead, what he did was crucial in starting the story in which we're all participating in. And we need to understand him. We don't have to love him. That's not the point. Not the point. He didn't want to be loved. He nobody knew he was the author of the Declaration of Independence until the 1790s. And then his followers made him into the author of the Declaration of Independence. That is, they celebrated him in order as a counter to George Washington, the Federalist hero, the father of our country. Uh, so Jefferson's reputation goes up and down because times change, and we get it. Those of us who have spent our lives studying Thomas Jefferson understand all the reasons you might find him distasteful and you might find yourself superior to him. But if you think historically, and I think Annette has thought historically, and she needs to think historically because she's lived the personal experience of the legacies of slavery. She knows what it's like, the modern legacy, to be far to a whole of a race that's had to overcome tremendous difficulties. One thing I want to say is that what we think of as progress and enlightenment, and when we think about Jefferson, it's Black writers who have engaged with Jefferson over the generations, who have called him to the carpet on his failure to live up to his own principles, who have given us, we owe to the critics of Jefferson, who engaged with him, who understood he was important, his words were important, have given us this sense of what our possibilities as a people are. I did a show once with Julian Bond, and I asked him, well, why are you so high on Jefferson? Why are you giving him so much credit? And this is not quoting Julian exactly, but he said something along the lines of, it's the Declaration of Independence, stupid. It's those powerful words, but words that are not just up there in the sky, natural rights, all these things. Those are words that come out of action, out of history, out of struggle. And the Declaration of Independence can be for us what it was for that generation, the revolutionary generation, for all of us, that, including people who were not welcome and to the included in that wartime people.
And now here we are, and Jefferson Jackson dinners are having their names changed. The New York City Council removed a statue of Thomas Jefferson, as you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, Donald Trump cited Thomas Jefferson to oppose the removal of Confederate monuments. Where do we find Thomas Jefferson in this moment of enormous upheaval? And people on each side are again claiming legacies of Thomas Jefferson.
Yeah, well, let's take him out of the football game and retire the football, and say this. Listen, he survives for us because of the way he engaged with his own moment, and that that's what's at stake for us. Because if you put him in his historical context and ask what he did, what he said, how the Declaration of Independence worked. And the first thing to remember about it is it's not the Declaration of Independence by Thomas Jefferson. It's the people declaring their independence. So if we cherish democracy, we don't cherish great leaders because they're gods, because what we do is we cherish ourselves or earlier versions of ourselves or our ancestors, but mostly we have faith in ourselves that we are prepared to take the leap and take on the risks that they took on. I'm not saying it doesn't matter that he's a slaveholder. In fact, understanding his relationship to his enslaved people is really crucial to getting at the core dynamics of the revolution itself, to understand why, when Jefferson recognized the injustice of slavery, he did so when he also saw his enslaved people as his enemies in a war. And it's not like that anymore. The circle of inclusion has grown. That's been the story we used to tell ourselves, is that we are increasingly inclusive. People have claimed a share. They've claimed recognition. They've claimed just what the Americans did in relationship to the British. Immigrant groups, racial minorities, everybody has said, listen, we can be part of this because the principles of this regime are not based on hierarchy and supremacy. They're based on equality of human beings, all of us. And Jefferson would say, that's right. That is natural rights. Yes, that's exactly right. And that's why he fought his war. And in fighting his war, in some ways, it strengthened the institution of slavery. This is the sad truth. It's the tragic truth. Jefferson continued to believe and pray for that the future generations would be more enlightened than him. Are we more enlightened? And how do we express that? By scoring cheap points off of Jefferson, or engaging with our problems in the spirit of the Declaration of Independence?
All right, in the few minutes we have left here, I do want to ask about how you put this together and about you. We should make sure we remember that there is a co-author here, although we're just interviewing Peter, but he worked on this with Francis Cogliano, another scholar. And you say that this book is 25 years in the making, that you and Francis talked about this a long time ago. And explain to us, tell us the story of when you first realized you might have something in common and that you could work on something together.
Uh, well, it was 25 years ago. We didn't know we were preparing to write a book, of course. Same thing happened to me and Annette Gordon Reed. We were just good friends, and we talked about Jefferson all the time. And then I've always been prepared to sign off and go out to pasture, but my friends tell me, no, let's write a book together. I blame them, and I blame Frank, because he thought maybe one more go at Jefferson would be useful, because now that his reputation was in such bad disrepair, maybe what's to lose? Is he a loser? No, we don't think so. Anyway, I'd say this: it's really friendship that's involved, and in this case, these co-authors of mine, they're younger than I am. So what we're modeling is intergenerational relations, and that's the big takeaway from the book. It's the relationship of the generations. This is a fiction. What is a generation? Is it just a figure of speech? No, Jefferson would say those people who rallied to the cause became aware of themselves as a generation.
What is it like to write with someone as opposed to being the emperor and writing on your own? Did you each work on a section, or did you divide it up, or did you go word by word,
Well, we take great
alternating?
pride. We defy you to find who wrote what. No, we didn't go chapter to chapter. So, well, my chapter is really good. I got to tell you confidentially, Frank's is terrible. Uh, no, it really was the product. I would say this. This is really pompous, and you're just too good at interviewing, having too much fun. Uh, but the process of writing a book is like the process of creating a republic, that is of finding a way, with the big egos. Writers have got big egos. That you write, you want to be remembered. You want to be remembered. I want to be remembered. Yet, just as Jefferson sublimated his own identity in that of the people, this is really ridiculous, but this won't ever be seen or repeated. I'm sorry, but we sublimated our separate identities in order to develop a single voice to declare what we thought the Declaration of Independence should mean today, and how Jefferson should be. And we say he's alive, he survives, and he survives because we wipe the slate clean, and we say, get over the ways we have identified with Jefferson and think about the ways he identified with us.
Put into perspective for us, how much did Thomas Jefferson leave behind to comb through when compared with some of the other people of his time, some of the other founding fathers?
Well, he left so much in his 17, 18,000 letters, that that it's easy to take him to court and pin a charge on him.
Yeah.
And of course, it's the so-called hypocrisy, saying one thing and doing another. And many people think the generational sovereignty thing is kicking the can down the road. Yeah, right. Okay. He could have freed his slaves, and we'd like him a lot more, but we wouldn't remember him at all, and he wouldn't have done anything for us. So great. You can cancel the complete past, and I defy you to create a better future. Good luck.
What is the favorite Jefferson artifact that you've had the chance to personally hold and interact with?
Well, thank you for asking that question, because I don't have any favorite artifacts. I don't fetishize anything. I mean, I'm looking for answers. Uh, I'm a very bad historian in the sense I don't get excited by being in historic places and touching historic things. We can't do that anymore. But being that kind of history, that doesn't do it for me. For me, here,
Picking up a glass that he once used, or
no,
picking up
no, please, or
bogus. Yeah,
sleeping in the very bed Washington slept in, or something along those lines. No,
yeah. I'll
uh,
pass on that. By the way, yeah.
yeah, no, it's just well, it's just a wonderful opportunity. I feel so privileged to have spent my career uh, worrying about these problems. And when I started worrying about them, I didn't think they had any relevance to us today at all. I just did it because it was fun. It was interesting.
How can we use the example of Jefferson and the memory of Jefferson to wrestle with our own modern political heroes, whether they be, and I'll put a few names: Barack Obama, Ronald Reagan, Lyndon Johnson, Dwight Eisenhower?
Well, I think we do the same thing and should do the same thing is get over the cult of personality and hope our leaders get over the cult of personality. Nothing personal about that. And, and think more in terms of what we owe each other and what's happening in a broader sense. Uh, think about institutions. Think in the good old fashioned way about pluralism, about how diverse groups are different, but they can work together and it's a better place for their existence. I think there are a lot of practical tests that we can make. Are we better off? Are we working on good government? Are we trying to address uh, national and global existential crises? I don't think so. I think we're just creating crises for ourselves these days. And I think we do have a cult of personality. I think the biggest challenge and the one that worries me most is I believe in all that stuff about equality and consent. Are we capable of being reasonable, of consenting? Are we actual reasoning individuals, or are we just the products of mediation, of all the of manipulation, of social media? Are we real people anymore? That's the foundation of asking the ultimate question: can we be a people who can govern ourselves? And that's a big question. It was a big question in Jefferson's day. It's a big question on ours. I hope people are concerned about this. And I hope, and I said, I'm out of here shortly because I'm nearly dead. I'm just joking, but probably actuarially, my days are numbered. And I just hope that we have it in ourselves. And Jefferson had that faith. So I have that faith.
You're starting to answer the question here. The question your book asks at the beginning is, can we make it another 250 years?
Yeah.
What's Jefferson's lesson?
Yep. That's it. That we made it this far, and that was your opening gambit, uh,
Yeah.
is uh, is from Jefferson's perspective quite amazing, really, because you don't figure things out forever. They're always time sensitive. It's dynamic.
Lincoln famously said, "If I'm known for anything, it'll be known for the emancipation." Of course, he was wound up being known for much more than that. Did Thomas Jefferson have any sense that he would be revered in this way? Did he bother with that type of wondering for himself?
Yeah, I think uh, he would take great pride in successive generations if they did remember him, but not him in isolation from this generation, but as somebody who was a part of it. And if he was a gifted writer and if his words uh, speak to us now, well, hey, any writer would say that's a great thing, and he'd be happy about that. But he doesn't want to be a statue. He doesn't want to go down as a god. He doesn't want to rule us from the grave.
The dedication of your book is to the future generations, and I'll just read it out for you. Edward Cogliano, Sophia Cogliano, Rob Lim, Thomas Roscolin, Robert Soderstrom O'Gorman, Rachel Onuf, Z. Onuf, Emmy Talquist, and Ben Tiefenthaler. Who are, I mean, I can guess who they are, but who are they and why did you dedicate the book to them?
Well, uh, it starts with family, and Jefferson started with family. These are the sentimental and emotional, lasting attachments that give us a sense that our identities are forged in our lives with others. Children, their partners, and we have one grandson. That's Thomas Roscoe Lim, and a brilliant kid, hoping for the best there. And Frank is an American who married a Swede who is from Korea. Uh, our One of our daughters married a Korean American. So we've got Swedes. Frank is a Boston Red Sox fan. He's from Boston, but he's now a UK person. It's a great and wonderful world, and it's a great and wonderful country. And hey, I hope it survives. It's been a wonderful ride for us. So no doom and gloom by me. I'm going, but I want to go thinking that you guys are gonna be having fun going forward, and it will go on and on.
All
Do
right. Well,
that for me, okay?
you're not gone yet. We're glad to have you. What is next? Do you have more friends who are going to pull you out of the pasture and make you keep
Well,
writing, or no? Are you
yeah,
going to do
Frank
another
and his
book?
wife Mimi are ganging up on me. They say, "Hey, if this book gets a good reception, we got another book for you, and it's going to be called Jefferson Believes." And we're going to explore because this whole Christian national thing is very upsetting to us. We want to interrogate this. Uh, the idea that Jefferson prayed, people get very excited about that because Jefferson. Jefferson thought every young man in America would be a Unitarian. I love that because I'm birthright Unitarian. Of course, no birthright Unitarian stays Unitarian. So uh, anyway, there's a lot of interesting stuff. He rewards our efforts. We think we spent a lot of time with him, and it's not wasted.
All right. Dr. Peter Onuf, the co-author of Thomas Jefferson Survives American Independence in His Time and Ours. Thank you so much for being here.
It's been great fun. Thanks.
I want to invite listeners to go to our Patreon page to ask for your support in keeping the show going. Go to patreon.com/AxelBankHistory. We'll donate part of your contributions to a charity for children's literacy. AxelBankHistory.com is designed by Nikki Rideout of Ellie Claire Designs. It has our most recent episodes, our featured episodes, and a link to our Patreon page. So check out Nikki's work. And thank you for listening to Axel Bank Reports, History and Today. Conversations with America's top nonfiction authors and why their books matter right now. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Axel Bank History. We will see you next time. Thanks.